Okay, that seems to be it's a good volume. Okay, so I heard about these Pandora Papers, and I got a little excited. I was like, "Wow, they maybe they're gonna catch some, you know, United States politicians offshoring. Someone like Elizabeth Warren or somebody that would be so sweet." I'm sure Nancy Pelosi is doing that. I'm sure they're all doing it. But so this is I guess these are the same people that did the Panama Papers back in 2016, and I remembered the Panama Papers for being very underwhelming in terms of the corruption that was there was very little in terms of U.S. political figures that were implicated in the Panama Papers, and at the same time, of course, uh, they highlighted Vladimir Putin's so-called corruption. Is it really corruption if everybody is doing it? Hmm. So, you know, it immediately makes this whole organization somewhat suspect to me. Um, I'd like to follow the money on this. I probably will. I'm going to try and follow the money on these guys about. Let's see what they're about. International Consortium of Investigative and Journalists. We want to inspire and cultivate a global community. That, my friends, is what you call a buzzword or a buzz phrase. I immediately see part of the underlying agenda. And when they wrote about the Panama paper, the when I was reading this little blurb about the Pandora Papers, and it seems to me like obviously they're upset that these offshore sort of tax havens exist, and that's interesting. There's been this big. You see a lot in the news lately. This the G7, which is seven nations in Europe. Not That's all it is. Seven. I forget. It's like Germany, United Kingdom, France, Italy, probably Spain's in there. I don't know what the other. Maybe Turkey's in there. Russia used to be in there, but they got kicked out. But Yeah, the G7, you see these little headlines occasionally. Oh, wow, they're going to reach a deal on closing tax havens. None of the tax havens are members, none of the tax havens that they're so upset about are members of the G7 in the first place. You're not going to be able to, I mean, I don't see it foreseeable in the future unless you have a one world sort of de facto government. If not in actuality, it'll be de facto. Unless you have some sort of one world regime, you're not going to be able to close tax loopholes. And really, me being more libertarian, I am all for the tax havens. I am against. I think that if a company wants to open, if they want to attract business by, lowering taxes in their jurisdictions, I think that's great because all government ever does is waste money anyway. It's a fucking leech. But looking at this, and let's go back to this. This is what really struck me. Let me see if I could find it. Yes. Okay. So they have a map in here, which I think that this would be embarrassing. I don't know why they have this map up here. They should have left it out. Um, where are the 336 politicians in the Pandora Papers from? Russia. They went after Russia. Ukraine. Uh, you know, Ukraine. I'm sure there's lots of powerful interests that want to clean up certain aspects of the Ukrainian government. So zero from the United States. Zero. Now they got some celebrities in here. Claudia Schiffer, I think. You know, Shakira, blah blah blah. So there's other people in here, but no politicians from the United States whatsoever. Now they do implicate a major law firm, which is was a, like, first of all Morgan Stanley. was involved, but they said we do not create the offshore companies. This is we have nothing to do with that. They know that these offshore companies are being created though, but they don't create them. So banks get they're not going to get in trouble for it, but I would imagine that could be a reportable sort of thing, right? That banks can do. And not that I'm for that at all. Not that I'm for banks disclosing, financial information of their clients to the government. But I would think possibly I'd have to look and see that could be a crime for them to see that and not actually do anything about it, not report it. But I don't know. Who cares? Because they're never going to get in trouble. Then we have, according to these guys, the Pandora Papers investigation also highlights how Baker McKenzie, the largest law firm in the United States, helped create a modern system and continues to be a mainstay of the shadow economy. So this law firm, Baker McKenzie, I guess they have an office down here in Miami area. This is Baker McKenzie. Looks like they're going on the whole green marketing scam, which is being pushed on everybody. That's a different subject for a different day, but it's all a scam. All this green climate change shit, it's another way to funnel money where they want to funnel it, is what it comes down to. And I even took advantage of that. There was one company, Westport Fuel. They did hydrogen fuel cell cars, and they were getting a lot of upward momentum on their stock. I knew it was bullshit, but I bought the stock anyway. I mean, let's make some money. So I made 100% returns on that. I mean, I'm not if you can't, I'm not going to be able to stop this madness, so I might as well partake in it a little bit. But there goes Baker McKenzie. This is is this actually the law firm? Is what I'm wondering. Insight. So yeah, these guys are. Oh yeah, they are. Look, they got the antitrust. Biden administration. I bet they love the Biden administration. Do they have? See, they got their little green section here. Yeah, who knows? But they're apparently implicated in this, and we'll see. So just remember that name, Baker McKenzie, a law firm. Just keep an eye out and see. I'd be interested to see what repercussions they suffer. I doubt too many. They probably have their tentacles everywhere, and there's not much that the government officials could do about them, even if they wanted to. They're going to tell them to stop doing it, which really means don't get caught doing it anymore, or change the way you're doing it. Who knows? Maybe they'll leave a loophole. They'll create a loophole for them. Let's see what kind of amendments come up in this budget proposal coming up. Maybe there's going to be something in there for that. So yeah, but this is very, very a glaring omission. 0 politicians from the United States. They also got 0 from Germany or the Scandinavian countries. Saudi Arabia has a couple, don't they? Yeah, there goes a couple from Saudi Arabia. Australia has none. So who aren't they reporting on? That's the question. I don't know. What could the Russian Federation? So they're missing Germany. They're missing. That's the biggest omission I see is Germany, United States, and Canada. They hit Mexico pretty hard. But they went after the Russian Federation, which is expected. I think that these guys are obviously connected somehow, some way. Just my base sort of feeling on this is that they are definitely connected to certain interests, multinational corporations, probably since they hate Vladimir Putin so much. I would think that they're in bed with some of the national security establishment people, military-industrial complex. So, because they did the same thing in 2016, they went after Vladimir Putin. And look, I like Vladimir Putin. I think he's a strong leader. Would I rather have someone like him in the United States as our leader? I think so. Compared to the leadership we have now, which is garbage, he would be a much better. He would be a much better. Russia is doing very good right now. They have good monetary policy. Their central bank is loading up on gold. I think they foresee the collapse of a fiat currency coming. So I think Vladimir Putin has turned the country in from the brink of disaster, which was actually partially caused by multinationals. I don't think Soros was involved. There was a bunch of corrupt multinational people that went into Russia right after, the Soviet Union broke apart, and they just pillaged the fucking place. And they had their monetary crisis, the ruble, macro inflation or hyperinflation, whatever you want to call it. And then in comes Vladimir Putin, and the party was over for the pillagers and these marauding transnationals, and they hate him for that. And also, Russia is just the best way to sort of between Russia and China. Okay, you can justify double the military spending in the eyes of the American people. You can justify double. You could justify $1.5 trillion of military spending. All they got to do is fear monger over Russia and China. And it's funny because China is our biggest trading partner, but they fear monger over China, and people don't connect the dots. People can't connect the dots. Why on earth? There's no way that our government or even the Chinese government would seriously want to start a war. Okay, not going to happen. The Chinese don't want it. We don't want it. Now things are kind of shifting a little bit. You know what happened with China? Well, back to this, though. That's my thing about this. I'm going to look into this before I move on to China. I'm going to move on to this. These guys, International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. So it's journalists from around the world, and they're coming together. They're working for other newspapers as well. And then they got some people that strictly work for these newspapers. But so it's got a lot of mainstream media people working in there. And I'm telling you what, you're not going to convince me ever that the United States has no politicians that are offshoring massive amounts of money. You're not going to convince me of that. Now, I know they have other ways to protect their money. Now, I heard the other day on a podcast, which was this new Wall Street to Main Street. Very good. I got to actually check them out in a minute before I go to sleep. So there's ways. They know, a lot of these politicians and their staffers, they know people in the IRS. They get their they don't have to, they go there and ask them for favors. Hey, I don't want to pay taxes this year. There was one politician, was it Elizabeth Warren? I think it was, that has had her taxes for 8 years. She's had her taxes, she's filed for extensions or something for the past 8 years. She hasn't paid taxes in 8 years. Okay. And so I don't know if fact check me on that, but I think it was Elizabeth Warren. I mean, what a hypocrite she is. But you're not going to convince me. So nice, I would say nice work, but not nice enough. Obviously, our establishment body politic has some influence within this organization. Okay, that's obvious. And, on second thought, how many did they get out of China? So China, I can understand them not finding that much because it's such a closed society, So they have 2 politicians in China. So that's a bit of a... But they just went crazy on Russia. And Russia probably does have a lot of corruption. But I bet you it doesn't have... It's not as corrupt as the United States. I think the United States right now is more corrupt than it's... Like, in terms of the systemic corruption, this endemic systemic corruption, I think the United States is worse off than it's ever been in its history. I think the corruption is so out of hand. I heard somebody say the other day it's Roman Empire levels of corruption. And if you know anything about the Roman Empire, you know that for most of its history as the empire, before, when it was the Republic, it was a little different. But as an empire, the corruption was rampant and everybody knew it. And, it wasn't the single cause of the demise of the Roman Empire, but it certainly was a major cause, especially since they had a military industrial complex not unlike ours, which literally ran the country, ran the empire. So, I hear China. These so-called communists in China. You think they're not? You think they're not on the take? I heard that they one other piece of information I got was that when they detained Jack Ma, uh, they took his money. Let's see if they confiscated his money. I think I heard that. I'm going to fact check that right now. Jack Ma, uh, CCP takes assets. I think they did relieve him of a lot of his. Yep, Ma's assets. Come on, Forbes. Can I read this? Yep. Beijing is now doling out some of the most lucrative slices of Ma's businesses to new partners of its choosing, including one of the most corrupt and financially shaky companies in all of China. Okay, so we have to think about this. These so called communists in China, like most communists, are fucking grifters. Oh, they like the money. And so has, if you look at the Soviet Union, how it was run, all of the elites in the Communist Party and the Soviet Union got the best of everything: the best cars, the best houses. It was not a classless society. You had unreal inequality where the Communist Party people, most of them, I'm sure some of them were purists and they really believed in the shit, but most of them got the best of everything. Okay, it would be the equivalent of someone here in the United States being a billionaire. So, but I guess, yeah, the corruption in China is rampant. For them to only find, I mean, even here, Forbes is calling out, including one of the most corrupt and financially shaky companies in all of China. So even Forbes here, which they're kind of, I think they're a bit deferential to China. They're calling out this Chinese company. They're basically connecting that company to the Communist Party, who's doling out slices of Ma's businesses. They took everything he had, they divided it among themselves, and gave it to their friends. And you're telling me that they could only find two? It would make sense insofar as, so they say two politicians. The way China's run, if you're a Communist Party leader, why would you want to offshore your money? I guess it wouldn't be that necessary for most of them, right? Because you're the motherfucking Communist Party. You can do what the fuck ever you want, you know. And as long as the Chinese get their bread and the Chinese people get their bread and circuses to their heart's content, they can do whatever they want. But to say the United States, especially with the Panama Papers, there wasn't much either that came out of the Panama Papers. And you got to think, you're telling me the United States politicians don't have aren't routing money through Panama? I mean, anybody who's been to Panama City knows that there's a lot of money coming in there, and some of it's coming from the United States. So, glaring omission. No politicians from the United States implicated. They went after the Czech prime minister, who, by the way, let me see, is a populist. I read somewhere. So that, these guys seem to me, this might be a fucking what do they call it? Op research operation, essentially, like opposition research. And they're all working with different, it's basically a consortium of journalists from the mainstream. They're all corrupt as fuck. So for corrupt journalists to be telling me about who's corrupt and who's not, I don't know. But it's interesting nonetheless. And the Baker McKenzie development, the fact that they're going to call out this law firm and not try and protect them is very interesting. And that there should be some fallout from that. But let's see how much, if we go to, if you want to see what kind of propaganda the media is trying to push, the best place to go to figure out what they're trying to push on you is Google News. So we go to Google News, and this is what the media wants you to actually know about right now. This is what is coming down from the government to the media proxies, and this is what they're trying to put out on you. As we know, Google was partially, very involved in the startup of Google was a CIA front company. I forget the exact name, but so there's connections there. So here's what Google wants me to know: there's oil spill in Huntington Beach. Okay, so great. So they're going to say illegalize. They're just going to want to, come down harder on oil. Only United States oil, though. They don't want to stop Russia or Canada or any other country from pumping oil, but they want to stop the United States from making oil. So that's going to be more of that. We're going to get more of those arguments. Biden blames McConnell mansion. Blah blah blah. So here you go. So they want us to be all pissed off about mansion and cinema, of course. And then they have their daily. It hasn't been daily lately, but they decided to put a Trump story in there. They're just recycling shit from a book. But this is what Google wants you to know right now. This is what they want you to know. This is that's where I always go. If I want to see what they are trying to push people into, I love this story. The Pandora Papers are on here, so I'm surprised. You're not going to see them on there tomorrow. NPR is the only one that did it. 80 politicians and families among 3,000, but none in the United States. DEA agent is killed in a shooting. This border being open does have its benefits. There's so many drugs coming into the United States, and they know it. And it goes to Chicago. I don't know the full details. All I know is that the shit goes to Chicago, and it gets distributed all over the place from there. They know exactly what's going on. The DEA cannot put a fucking dent in the amount of drugs coming through the border. And I personally, I think drugs should be legal anyway. But what you do have with that is the influence, which can be pretty nefarious of the cartels. Okay, you have that influence, but they're not any more nefarious than the politicians. Let's be honest. So that was for me, but yeah, this is what they want us to do. See, SCOTUS, everybody's they're fear mongering over SCOTUS. So anyway, back to China. What people don't realize, let's see, China. What people don't realize is everything was pretty hunky-dory with China. Okay, and then you start to see a shift. And here's why. We're going to do a 5-year. Let's do a 10-year. China's holding of U.S. Treasury securities. They got up to a peak right around 2016. They dumped a bunch in 2017, probably because they were pissed about the. They started actually. The peak. No thanks. The peak. They start slowly offloading it. It's hard to tell, but they started slowly offloading. That's what I heard too. Around 2013, they start slowly offloading. Then boom, boom, and now they're selling them more. This is why the posture of the United States has changed vis-a-vis China. It's because China doesn't want to hold on to U.S. treasuries. Who in their right mind would want to hold on to U.S. treasuries? I mean, sounds like they're pretty smart to me. But, the similar thing happened when France... France demanded gold bullion delivery for U.S. dollars. So in the 60s, France actually called the U.S. out on its bullshit and said, hey, if these dollars are supposed to be redeemable in gold, only foreign governments were allowed to do that, by the way. then we want our gold because we don't because they saw how the United States was spending in the 60s with the war on poverty, which didn't actually solve anything, thanks government, and all that other bullshit. They saw the inflation coming, so they demanded their gold. And the stance of, you know, the stance of the United States, you start to see a lot of propaganda, like anti-France propaganda. 1960s 1970S. So you started to see a lot of this. See? You know, you started to see, I can't find it like on the fly like that, but you started to see there was a lot of anti-France propaganda. That's when the whole thing started where they used to call the French, oh, they're so bad, they couldn't win a war, they were terrible in World War II. All that shit really started, all that like negative sort of propaganda towards France started in the 60s and 70s and it got pretty bad for a while from what I understand because they not offloaded, they demanded the gold that the US dollar was supposed to be redeemable in. All right, and same thing is happening with China and Russia. Another reason, besides the fact that we can use them as excuses to, fund massive, corrupt black holes of a fucking national security state. I mean, they literally are. Once that money goes into the event horizon of the Department of Defense, once that tax money goes in there, it cannot get out. You'll never see it again. No one's going to know where it went. The whole Afghanistan thing was, I saw a video recently of Julian Assange. Excellent. I love it. Where he said the Afghanistan war was basically a money washing operation. And he just says it so nice and so succinctly. Julian Assange, Afghanistan. So this is just a beautiful. Let me see if I can.
Because the goal.
Okay.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is.
Let me see if I turn this around. It might be better.
To use Afghanistan to wash money. Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan, and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
Fucking brilliant. Fucking brilliant. He said it best. But yeah, so I was a little, disappointed by these Pandora Papers. My guess is this consortium of journalists includes a lot of journalists that work in places like Reuters, Associated Press, The Guardian, New York Times, Washington Post. I'm sure there's a lot of journalists in this consortium. They didn't touch any United States politicians. Are you telling me that the largest law firm in the United States, Baker McKenzie, which orchestrated all of these offshoring schemes, they didn't have any clients that were from the that were in the body politic of the United States? Are you really going to try and suggest that to me? I don't buy it. So you have to do better than that. I'm very skeptical of a lot of things. You know, my dad was a intelligence guy in the Army, pretty serious intelligence guy too. I learned very long ago, not because he gave me any classified information or anything. He's actually really good at keeping secrets, but I learned as a kid, and I paid attention to what was going on, and I learned that things are a lot of times not what they seem. So we have this drop of information that implicates people. Now look at us. We are actually trying to uncover corruption, but these are all people that they're going after. All these politicians are people that are not well liked, or most of them. I'm sure they have a few others that they threw in there, like the celebrities. They highlight these celebrities here because they have a picture of Claudia Schiffer and Shakira, who's actually from Colombia. They have pictures of these people here to make it look like they actually did some serious journalism to uncover, corruption within the United States. I don't give a fuck what the celebrities are doing. For all I care, they could put their money out there and offshore it. I'm really not against it. What I do want to see are politicians being caught in the act of being pathetic hypocrites, because they all are. So that's what I'm interested in seeing, and you get none of that here. And that's just, this is supposedly the largest law firm it's a U.S.-based law firm. These are U.S. Morgan Stanley, U.S.-based bank, and you're telling me no one used those? Maybe they knew. Maybe these people know that they got better ways to hide their money. I don't know, but I would think that if you did this with 600 journalists, they said 600 journalists from 150 news outlets, they spent 2 years on this or something like that. Are you kidding me? And you couldn't find one United States politician? Bullshit. Okay, so that's my spiel for today.